Hello, welcome to the January 7th, 2025 Haldane Board of Education business meeting. I'm now calling the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
President Clements.
Here.
Vice President Valentine.
Here.
Trustee McNally.
Here.
Trustee Clemenson.
Here.
All right, so moving on to approval of the agenda, I just noticed one very minor thing that we want to adjust before we approve the agenda, which is to move agenda item O, superintendent's thoughts, to before us, the board convening it into executive session. So just switching those two. And then the board will adjourn in executive session. Okay. So the recommended action?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the agenda as discussed.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. So, yeah. So I realize it's been a few days since people came back, and it feels like the holidays were a long time ago, but I want to welcome everyone back after the break and hope people had good holidays along with time to rest and recharge. We're going to discuss the superintendent search and the focus groups today in a little bit, but I wanted to take the opportunity at the top of the meeting to thank, actually to give Megan Shields probably thank you number 5,785 of the year, but for organizing those and the places. I mean, everything just went really smoothly. And in fact, I got an email from Lynn at the end of the day where she once again calls out how fantastic Megan has been in facilitating everything with the search. So thank you very much. And then I also want to thank everyone who participated, but really give a big shout out to, as I understand it, the high school social studies teachers for identifying a group of high school students who are civically minded and for them to participate in the high school student focus group. And so I wasn't at any of them. I welcomed everybody to all of the focus groups today, but I didn't attend a focus group. But Lynn and Neil were just really so impressed by the thoughtfulness of those high school students, even when there were some points of disagreement, how they engage in those conversations in really super respectful ways. And I can't think of anything, nicer to hear about, our students. So I thought that was really great. Some other thanks. Thank you to Maggie for running the December 17th meeting while I was in Texas taking care of some family things, as well as to Josh for a really thoughtful presentation. And even though I couldn't see the audience, it seemed like much of the administrative team was here for that meeting, and I really appreciate that. As well, some really positive things happened at that meeting, and I'm sorry that I missed it. So those are really my only comments to start the meeting. Mr. Albano.
Okay, welcome back. Happy New Year. So I have only two topics, and both happen to be very positive. So I'd like to thank Catherine Platt and Adam McNally for working with us on the EPA electric bus grant. We submitted it today, so week ahead of the deadline, which feels good. I'll continue to update the board periodically, but basically we are pursuing 4 large electric buses. A reminder, the grant would be for the EPA portion is $170,000 per bus. Also available to us is a NYSERDA grant, and that would, if approved, would be $147,000. So bringing the total to about 315 or 317 to be exact. My understanding, the prices right now for a full-size electric bus are ranging $350 to $370. So my quick math is that this could cover somewhere between 80–85% of the cost. I think really making it feasible for the district. Reminder, the EPA, there are no guarantees with this. High poverty districts, rural districts, high needs areas will get priority. But we've seen some other school districts similar to ours demographically that were approved over the past year. So, we're going to remain optimistic. We're not going to wait. The approval will happen around April. We're going to pursue the NYSERDA grant starting next week. We're not going to wait for that. This way, both grant submissions are in. And then I think the budget process will need to consider replacement buses. We looked closely at the inventory, and we have 2 buses that are nearing end of life, and that 2 other buses that within the next 2 to 3 years will need replacement. So if these grants come through, the timing would be perfect almost for us to replace 4 buses. But if not, we may need to consider 1 more diesel bus or potentially 2 just to bridge us another year or so. So I think if the grants come through, we'll consider that. And if not, we'll have to look at maybe a proposition to replace those buses that are end of life only. And I think we can continue, the discussion throughout the budget process. And I have to take any questions.
I would assume that the EPA takes into consideration the current state of our fleet. Like, is that information that is useful to them? They understand that we have vehicles that are near the end of.
Yes, yeah, they have to be diesel. There's a criteria. They have to be diesel buses, and then you have to retire. You have to take those buses off the road, either scrap them or turn them in, and replace them with electric. Then there's a bit more discussion about infrastructure, but I think first things first, we do have a consultant that is examining the infrastructure, and we'll continue to update the board about that as well. Okay. The second piece of good news is we have officially opened registration for pre-K
That is great.
next year. So tomorrow, well, I shouldn't say it's not tonight. Tomorrow it officially opens. Parents can go to the website. There's an FAQ. There's plenty of information for parents. They certainly can register. It will remain open till March 31st. So we're giving a pretty long window for parents to put in. We have ads running in the Highland Current for 2 consecutive weeks, in the PCNR for 2 consecutive weeks. It'll go out in Ms. Jammon's principal notice several times. And also we're giving informational pamphlets to all the pre-K and programs in the area, the daycare programs. So we're really working hard to get the word out there. But at the end of the day, there probably will be a lottery. We have a cap of 18, as you may recall, and it'll be a random selection, and we are excited about that.
This is great. It's very exciting. I'm really interested to see how many people, what the request is for the spots. But it's very exciting. Actually, that was one of the questions you asked last week, really, I think, was about this, the whole idea of alignment of pre-K to K, and I thought that was a really great question. I would have asked that question.
See?
Normally I might save this to the end, but I really want to reiterate again my thanks to Carl and Catherine and Adam for picking this up. This was not something we were anticipating. I've talked about it before. I'll be brief and just say it again. The Phillipstown Climate Smart folks came in. They had some information that we hadn't heard that sparked some immediate response from Mr. Albano, and looking to see what other districts had done in terms of applying for these grants. And so to add this on top of everything else and to do it in such a quick way is, just so appreciated. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
All right. So actually it's going to kind of speed through a lot of this agenda. So we're actually already to the point of our meeting where we're open to communication from the public. The Haldane Board of Education desires and values input from the entire school community. This first public comment session is reserved for comments on any special presentations or active agenda items. For those who wish to address the board, please sign in and state your name for the record. We'd ask you to keep your discussion of personnel. We'd ask you to keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less. We discourage disparaging remarks and discussion of district personnel. And while we would not engage in dialogue, we want you to know that we're listening. All right. So next we have on our agenda our information reports that we'll act on at our next business meeting. So those are there for our review. And now we're moving into consent agenda minutes. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And consent agenda financial. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And consent agenda personnel. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
And I'm just stopping. I don't think there's anything here that we need to or want to call out. Nope. Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. So, actually, I'll open up my email. And so just really want to give the board just a brief update, and the community who's ever watching about the focus groups that Putnam, Northern Westchester, BOCES conducted for us. You know, as a reminder to ourselves and the community, what we're looking for in these focus groups is input from big C community, right? So parents and community members and students and administrators and faculty and staff on what they believe are the challenges and opportunities that the district has, as well as the characteristics of the superintendent, as well as some questions they would like us to consider. And this is really, it's these focus groups as well as the survey that are really the board's, effort and desire to get input from the community to shape our search, right? Just a reminder that the board is conducting the search, and the board will make the final decision. But I was here throughout the day just to welcome and thank people for taking the time to participate in the focus groups. And while Lynn and Neil are certainly going to be very careful to sort of take that information and condense it down a bit for us, and I think keep people's responses relatively confidential, not just relatively confidential. They did tell me just what great input they got, how excited people were to have the opportunity to participate, and just how invested they were in this process as well. So I think it went really well. And then just to give folks an idea of how many people participated, which I just so you know, there were 7 parents and community members came this morning. The entire administrative team, I think, was there. We had 13 students from the high school. I mean, that was really great. 15 high school and middle school teachers and 3 elementary school teachers. I also want to remind folks that there's one more focus group for the community that will be before the PTA and the athletic booster club meeting on Tuesday the 14th. It's at 6 o'clock, and
6:30
it's
at
at 6:30
Butterfield.
out Butterfield, right, which is where the PTA meeting will be right after that at 6:30. And then if people can't participate in one of the surveys or don't want to for whatever reason, I hope everyone will consider answering the survey as well. So we're definitely on our way. So does anybody have any questions about those? Thanks again to everybody who's participating. All right, so now moving on to the policy review. I guess I'll start with the recommended action, please.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby adopts the following Haldane Central School District policy as attached: naming of school facilities, donation plaques, and memorials.
Is there any additional discussion or conversation folks want to have about that? All right, thanks to Maggie and Michelle for their
Other than gratitude.
Yes, their continued work, and
Thank you.
Carl, yeah, Carl and actually
And
Megan.
This is another Megan.
They're not gonna get like a tally, we need like a scorecard, like one of those running. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Wait, did we motion and?
Didn't I? I thought I took a mo, did I forget to? I meant
You
to.
can take it. We could go back.
I'll go back.
Whatever you want.
If I must not have, I meant to before I said anything. Oh, yes, be it resolved, you read it, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right, now, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Sorry, I missed that part. Okay. New business, the CSE and CPSE recommendations. May we have the recommended action, please?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendations of the committees on special education and preschool special education as presented.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, and now moving to the external audit report for the 2023-2024 school year, the corrective action plan for the extra classroom activity funds. May we have the recommended action, please?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the corrective action plan for the external audit report of the extra classroom activity accounts for the 2023-2024 school year.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
I've looked at the plan. It looks really good. We know that's a challenging group of funds to manage. I feel like it's one more thing for Catherine to have to do, although I know you were probably doing many of these things behind the scenes anyway without having a corrective action plan.
No, and it's kudos to the extracurricular activity advisors for the improvement year over year that we're seeing. So, if you look back, last year was the first year we had to do a corrective action plan because of the way the auditors, they now present us with a management letter, so there's a required action for that. But year over year, they're just, we just keep working on, tightening the regulations around it. And, when you're working with kids and
Right.
student treasurers and busy schedules and things like that, things sometimes are missed, but they're doing a great job. So I give the credit to them.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that. That's great to know. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? So around this time last year, we first considered the tax exemption for the volunteer firefighter and ambulance workers. And so I think we had promised the community that we would come back and revisit that. And so that's where we are.
I'll come over. I'll sit though instead of standing.
Okay.
I'll join you.
Good, excellent. Even better.
So this time last year, like Peggy said, we looked at the proposal of all the different options we could do for the volunteer firefighter and ambulance worker tax exemption. The biggest issue that you run into when you go to do this is the fact that the unknown of how many people it will impact. And this is a tax shift. It's not like a STAR exemption where we get the money back and this is a tax shift from one parcel holder to another parcel holder. So last year we set it at a minimum service years of 2 to minimum of 2 years with an exemption of 5%. We can go up to 10%. So I think that is where we left the discussion last year of what we might want to do this year. My plan is to continue to research what happened over the last year and present to you at our next meeting kind of everything that I know about what transpired, how many people. We do know it was 19 parcels in the district that took advantage of the tax exemption, smaller number than some of our estimates had shown. We have just over 2,800 parcels in the district, so 19 out of 2,800. It was a small amount. And so I feel like we'll go, if it's okay with you, I'd like to add it to the agenda for next meeting to do a presentation on what our next steps could be, what happened in the past year, what we maybe should do. And if that moves forward with you for the first meeting in February, we would have a public notice of a public hearing publicized so that we would hold the public hearing, and then we could adopt a new resolution at the first meeting in February, changing this if that's what the board decides to do.
And we'll have a better idea. Is it possible to have a better idea of how many firefighters North Highlands and Cold Spring has eligible? And then we wouldn't know how many are actually going to obviously take advantage of it, but.
I will try to see, I'm working to get as much information as we can. I still think it's one where unless you can get all the service records from all the different fire companies, and who else might be there from lifetime service and things like that, I don't think we'll ever really know the number that it could be. I just know that with, I would imagine anyone who was eligible might have wanted to take it. So it would be whether someone just didn't have the 2 years of service or the service credits or different things like that. I wouldn't anticipate it would grow much beyond, because we offered it. You know, if we hadn't offered it, I'd be really concerned that we still didn't know the numbers. But, 19 parcels took, we had the exemption applied to 19 parcels. So I wouldn't imagine it would be too many more than that. But again, it's one of those ones that even when you talk to the Department of Real Property Services, there's just no way of knowing.
That's like less than it's way less than 1% of so
Yeah.
well, this is great. I mean, this is what we would do at the time, right? Is that we would come back, we would, we wanted to be responsible, right? Because it's a tax shift, not a tax removal.
Right.
Not using the right word, but and I really appreciate, Catherine and Carl, working with us to make sure that we're thinking about this in a timely manner. So yeah. And I guess the other thing I'd say, and this is based on, just a casual conversation with somebody in the community, but my impression, not that this is surprising, is that those first responders and are taking very seriously, who is eligible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like really recognizing that it's, that there are criteria to be eligible, and really wanting to make sure to implement those. And I think we all appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And the regionalization, so the next item is the regionalization submission that you all talked a little bit at the last meeting. Yeah.
Want me to just give a quick summary?
Yeah.
So Michelle's not here this evening. She took very diligent notes when we heard the commissioner speak last month. But basically, the regionalization plan is a New York State initiative to gather information from all districts in New York State, I think 730 some odd districts. And the idea is to look for opportunities for sharing of services, for partnering within neighboring communities. Some people raised concerns that we have a model in place, which is BOCES, and they facilitate sharing of services. Here at Haldane, for example, we're doing a lot of sharing of services. We utilize BOCES for OCED and a number of other things. We have partnerships with neighboring districts. We have sports mergers, things such as that. So I think we're doing a very good job looking for opportunities and efficiencies. But the governor, made this proposal, and with the data that State Ed collects, the idea is that they may rework some policies, make recommendations to have some money and financial incentives for additional sharing and additional partnering. The concern was that we would be forced to share. And that was raised by actually the Lower Hudson Council of School Superintendents, which is our membership group. Their voices were heard loud and clear, and the commissioner issued assurances that participation in this initial data gathering step would not require any forced partnering or sharing of services, that it's exploratory, it's to inform discussions that will happen 2 or 3 months down the road, but no one will be forced to share. With these assurances, Michelle and I listened to the commissioner, and in addition to giving assurances, she said, we hope to lobby and to hopefully steer funding to facilitate more sharing. We believe this is a good thing for districts. And in hearing that, both Michelle and I, think that the board ought to give us the okay to go forward. It doesn't require an official vote. However, boards have the authority to opt out of this initiative. A handful did. We think there are about a half a dozen total in the region. Some of the reasons they're giving is, well, this is, doing, duplicating efforts because we have BOCES, we share already. Others, basically said it's more work, and it is, by the way, even just this data gathering. I mentioned last meeting that Josh has really done the bulk of it. We have about 90% of the data complete. Catherine and I have a little financial piece to look at over the next couple of days, but the due date is the 15th. So we will be certainly ready to submit Haldane's data if the board agrees. But we did want to give one last opportunity, and Peggy, you weren't here last meeting, just in case the board has any concerns and would consider opting out. But I think I've shared with everyone in the updates the commissioner's letter giving assurances that there will be no forced participation. So with that, any questions? And really, we're just looking for your consent for us to go forward and submit on the 15th, if the board is okay with that.
So, yeah, so I was just gonna say, sounds good. Do we know what next steps will be once everything is submitted from the districts?
We do. Once the data is collected, they're charging the local BOCES. So for us, it would be Putnam, Northern, Westchester. And I actually spoke briefly with Neil and Lynn today. They would facilitate discussions and exploring opportunities for sharing within our area. So then, BOCES would take that information and look for opportunities and facilitate discussions. And that would happen, I believe, April or May is the timeline.
I have all kinds of thoughts about this, but they're not really appropriate for a board meeting. I hope, personally, I hope that this is a way to try and find ways to increase equitable opportunities for students in different districts. I think especially, I think it'd be hard for us to figure out, districts that, especially in a state like New York, where we have so many small districts, opportunities are going to be limited. And so to the extent that this, moves us forward in a way, I think it's good. But I appreciate you bringing all this, to us, and to Josh for putting everything together. And, I think the districts that decided not to do that, that's certainly their prerogative, but it seemed kind of, I don't know, like kind of a good citizen thing to do at this point, to at least join in these early efforts about it.
Agreed. I see no downside. It's and quite frankly, the information and that was one of the criticisms. It's information they have. It's student data.
Well, that is frustrating. Yeah.
So that was one of the criticism. Some validity to that. We're giving you information that you already have up there in state ed. However, again, we're ready to finish this and submit if the board is okay with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll move forward. Thank you.
So we're now at the second opportunity for communication from the public. This is open to all school district matters.
Yeah, just in my spare time, I decided to read the Hudson Valley Fjord Trail secret document as it relates to just the south end of the trail. And obviously, I think there's a lot of benefits to doing this. But at the same time, I have some concerns for the school to think about and to discuss that I think I'm bringing here to you now. One of the pieces that I read was the sheer number of people that are anticipated to be brought into the community. The number over the course of the year was 268,000 people. And they estimate that it's 1,700 people a day, primarily in the spring and fall when we're in session. And I think we already know our traffic issues, and we're already trying to address that in the bond referendum. And so as we're trying to work with our architects and engineers and the layouts and thinking about traffic flow and traffic patterns, I think this all relates to one another in our tiny little community. There's a lot of conversation about a roundabout down by the Washburn Trail, which might not impact us as much, but there's very little to no change in 9D and Main Street, which is where we get backed up in the morning. So as we're having these discussions, as it relates to the bond passing, and we're looking at that, I think we just have to be very mindful and at least paying attention to what this may do to traffic around us. The other piece that I had some concerns on, but I didn't feel like were addressed in the SECRA, were emergency services. And when you're bringing in this many people into our community, what do the additional emergency services look like, knowing that we're volunteer full for the fire department and partial volunteer for the EMTs and EMS? You know, we'll have school and we'll have kids and we'll be in session, and availability and ambulance and stuff like that at times can be difficult to begin with. So I just bring those two things in terms of our paying attention to what's happening with this. I know there is a public session on January 14th, and I plan on asking my questions, both as a community member. I'm not necessarily representing the school. That would be you guys. I'm going to ask those questions as a community member and as a parent. And I do know that they've opened up their public session to go until March 4th. But I'd just like to put that on record.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So moving to board reflections. All right. Did the Haldane Horizons come out today? Did I just see it? I mean, my God, it is, people should look at it. It's ridiculous how much stuff is in that thing. I mean,
A lot happens around here.
It is a wealth of so many different fantastic things in that document. It was really so gratifying to see it. It made me kind of want to print it out and put it right down. Anyway, thanks to Megan for working on it, but thanks to everybody. It just reflects such a large communal effort of just so many great things happening in the district. So it was really nice to see today. Carl, any final thoughts from you? Okay, so I am then going to move that the board enters into executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment of a new superintendent. We won't take any action during the executive session, and we'll adjourn out of this executive session. So may I have a second, please?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you, everybody.